Robert Pattinson should dump Kristen Stewart. I think he'll thank me in a couple years if he takes my advice. Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 5. Yeah, wow, of Let's Talk About You. I'm your host, Ben Robinson. I'm here with my friend Jackie. So before I always give a little introduction about the podcast. Before I do that, let's talk about you. You give yourself a little introduction, whatever you want to say.
All right. Hi guys. My name is Jackie, also known as Fat Raccoon. I'm a TikToker, and yeah, I make videos consistently.
Awesome. So we here on this podcast, again, I know I say it every time, but just in case this is the first one, what we do is we talk a little bit about like a certain topic that might be more prevalent or more important to us. That's about like half the episode, and then we answer questions and we play a little game at the end, and that's that. So today's topic is definitely going to be a lot, but before we get into that, Happy New Year. This is the first podcast episode of 2021. So that's exciting. How was your New Year's?
My New Year's was, as fun as it can get with, Corona, but it was
Yeah.
still great. Just glad to be done with all of 2020.
Yeah,
So.
I know. I mean, moving forward, hopefully it gets better from here. Basically, I think everyone kind of knows what I'm talking about when I mention current events that have been going on recently.
I think the most prevalent thing that's going on right now is the coup at the Capitol, which is kind of what everybody's been talking about right now, which is so crazy. Like, how did you deal with that? Like,
I was like, I wasn't even home because I mentioned this on like a live stream, but I had to go stay at a different house because my house was like getting floors redone, blah, blah, blah. But like,
mm,
I wasn't even home. I was away, and I'm seeing all this stuff on my phone, like the leadership group chat for TikTok for Biden. People kept sending stuff in, and I was like, oh my God, like every time I checked my phone, it just got worse and worse. I'm 99% sure everyone listening knows what happened. But if you don't, there was an organized type of riot,
yeah.
attack, whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
at the US Capitol building, which houses the Senate chambers. And basically, people, Trump supporters, broke into the Capitol and vandalized the place, broke into offices, broke windows, all this crazy shit.
Oh my gosh. It was like I was like going through, I think, my social medias, and I was just like I want to know what the internet thinks about this right now. So I was just scrolling through TikTok. I was going through Instagram, and I was just like, everybody was honestly so, I don't know how to relieved that it happened almost. You know what I mean? Like everybody was like, yeah, do you get it now? Like, I don't know. It was so funny because everybody was so ready for it to happen.
Yeah.
Because I think that it seems as though, like the parties on, closer to the right, very much bank on being morally superior. And I feel like this was really that thing that proved that, it's not like that at all. So I think that was a really interesting thing to see, and to see like people reacting personally to it was also really crazy, and to see like the outcomes, all of that going on social media right now was crazy. Like it's just one thing after another.
Yeah, and it definitely did prove a lot of things that, they hold true to them wrong, for lack of a better term. And I think we could definitely delve into some of that. But like how there's just so many different like double standards that kind of just like completely confirmed themselves with this event going on, starting with the Blue Lives Matter movement, how they just completely turned that on its head.
For me, it was mostly seeing like, because somehow like my For You page is kind of intertwined with like both like left wing and right wing politics. And so I was looking at a whole bunch of, I don't know, excuses, lack of a better term. It was kind of, oh, the lady that died, she was a US veteran, like she shouldn't have died, she was a good person, she wasn't like George Floyd. And then it was just like, no, but she was a domestic terrorist by definition.
Yeah.
And then it was just like, no, 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 it wasn't her. It was, they were fake. That it was Antifa, even though Antifa is not an actual organization. But it was just like, it was an excuse after an excuse after an excuse. And it's just like, my thing about it is that I didn't even make any videos about the fact that they were going totally against, you know, law enforcement, because for me, it was never about Blue Lives Matter, you know, like it wasn't, to me, when people said that, back the blue or Blue Lives Matter or All Lives Matter, it wasn't, oh, I think that, you know, police are doing their job correctly. It was just that in all the years that I've been living in, you know, my white comfort, I have never before seen white people as the antagonist of this story. And so it's hard to see white people being the problem, because during Black Lives Matter, Black people were turned into the problem, even though the only reason they were there was because there has consistently and constantly been an underlying problem, which is systemic racism in this country, right? Like, I was so laid back about it, I didn't even really care, because it just proved correctly that, you know, there are two roles to this story. It's POC as the antagonist and white people as, you know, the superhero. And in this specific situation, white people couldn't play that role because they were specifically the villain. And so instead, they turned it around, and now it's not a black and a white issue, it's a left and a right issue. So it was Antifa, not just a bunch of Trump supporters becoming domestic terrorists. And that was my thing with it. It's just that this country has never before seen white people as the problem since, you know, slavery. Because apparently after slavery, everything was back, you know, everything was totally okay.
Yeah.
Everything was totally okay.
They
It
just
wasn't.
after that.
Yeah, it's never been okay. And that's the problem. And I think that's what people don't see, is that, oh, why is there so much discourse all of a sudden? Because for the first time ever, people can talk about their experiences without being shut down.
I definitely agree. And it did just completely solidify that it was never about blue lives. It was just about
Absolutely.
them bringing it up to counteract the Black Lives
Yeah.
Matter movement, because they felt as though, like, you know, they could do no wrong. And so if like people are saying, oh, well, like, for example, and this isn't absolutely is not the only thing the Black Lives Matter movement kind of went against, but like police brutality was one of the main issues and one of the main things, like events caused by police brutality were one of the main things that people brought up during this movement. And, you know, as it's gone on. So people, you know, I'm just going to say like right wing people, for like lack of a better term, of like the people who aren't, you know, with us, but they felt under attack when people are just trying to speak up about like prejudice that they've experienced, and they're like, okay, well, I back the blue. But it was never actually about that. And this
Mm-hmm.
just completely solidified that, because the second they feel as though like their blue lives are inhibiting them from, you know, pushing their agenda, they go against them too. And that was just like, you know, them breaking into the Capitol because they think the election is fraud. And the second a police officer tries to stop them from doing that, because that's quite literally illegal, all of a sudden their blue lives don't matter anymore. So, you know,
Mm-hmm.
this is what you said, but it was never about blue lives. And this just completely solidified that. So again, like,
Absolutely.
wasn't surprised,
Mm-hmm.
but was, you know, still upset that this even happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing that I've learned is that, you know, every time that you turn on the news, you're going to be disappointed. And I think that's just kind of something that we have to deal with right now. But I don't think it's always going to be like this, you know, but unfortunately, that's just kind of what the norm is.
Yeah. And honestly, like, I see it as a little bit of a blessing in disguise, because we're definitely making progress in
Absolutely.
terms of like advancing our country, like, you know, becoming more progressive. And, you know, the fact that it takes so much struggle is really upsetting and really disheartening, but we're making more progress than we have been in past years. So the fact that the news is always going to be something new, something, oh, this happened, you know, things are gonna have to happen for change to be made. It's like, that's just proven in history.
I feel like throughout this entire process of this entire country becoming more political, um, in my journey of like social media, and you know, ever since I started my platform back in March, I've realized that, you know, being not racist will never be enough. Not for this country. This country was built on systemic racism, the gentrification, you know, like all of that negative stuff. Negative is like the only word I can find for it, but it's such a serious, you know,
Yeah.
serious, I can't even find a word for it. But, you know, it was built on such bad things that we have to be anti-bad, not just not bad. And so I feel like people don't really understand. Like, I feel like we're in that breaking point where we're realizing that you have to rededicate yourself every day to being an anti-racist country. And so I feel like, you know, my friends especially, I've had a lot of conversations, and it's, you know, Jackie, like, I don't say the N-word, I respect, you know, people of color. And I'm just like, okay, so now what?
Yeah, like
Because
it's not going to be enough anymore. And, you know, it
mm-hmm,
shouldn't have ever been enough. But now that we're
mm-hmm,
becoming so progressive, it's absolutely not enough anymore.
it's not enough. And I mean, it's like it's a gesture of respect, but the gesture of respect isn't going to do anything for systematic racism, which is killing Black people. So I feel like, yeah, like, just, you know, unlearning all of that, because, you know, as a white person, I feel like you understand that underlyingly somewhere through the process of you growing up, you were taught somewhat about racism, and you had to make that decision of whether or not that was something that you were going to be or you were not going to be. And so I feel like some people, some white people, don't really understand that concept yet, that, you know, racism is engraved into all of our societal practices, and you have to consistently unlearn it every single day, and you have to rededicate yourself to being anti-racist every day,
Yeah,
not
it's
just when you come onto social media.
absolutely. And it's obviously, you know, I am completely aware and like able to recognize my privilege, but like growing up through middle school, even through like the beginning of high school, like I've never, obviously, never felt any prejudice towards anyone else, but I also was absolutely not committed to any sort of like anti-racist actions because I had that privilege and I never experienced it, so it wasn't at the forefront of my mind. And so I am definitely very grateful that we've started to progress more because it's allowed me to like educate myself and like as you said like just relearn things every single day and like commit to actively being anti-racist as opposed to just being new like being a good person
Mm-hmm.
like wholeheartedly is just not enough. Like you have to
Mm-hmm.
go out of that way to like influence other people.
I feel like we kind of have to come to this position where, you know, we have to ask ourselves, you know, what are you willing to give up for a better society? You know, how many friends, how many followers, you know, how many family members, how much time are you willing to take to educate yourself and the people around you? And I feel like in the long run, that's really what's going to matter, because it can't just be people of color understanding racism and educating themselves and understanding, you know, the system. It also has to be white people, you know, being, you know, there at the front lines also, you know, understanding and learning, because the difference between, you know, people of color and racism and white people with racism is that people of color have to experience it consistently all the time, and white people, you know, have the privilege of learning about it. But that doesn't mean that just because you've learned about it that you can't really do anything else after you've learned about it. You learn about it and then you apply it to every day, and you understand, like, what can I do to make this, you know, area, make this community more comfortable for my Black peers, because it all starts locally.
Yeah.
It all starts with your community. And so, yeah, I feel like we're getting to that place, and, you know, it's really exciting to see, and I'm really excited to see about that. I've been seeing it on my For You page a lot. People, you know, doing Zoom meetings with, you know, people around their community, talking about, you know, what it's like being a person of color in this day and age, what's it like being a white person in this day and age, and learning about the privilege that you have. And, you know, those conversations are what we should have done a couple decades ago.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, whether you like it or not, like these, as you said, like people of color are always the ones who have to experience it. And this is a discourse within itself, but, you know, I think we're on the same page about it. White people don't experience racism. Rather, they're the ones perpetuating it. You know, whether or not you're like, you know, whether or not a white person is racist within themselves, like white people as a whole are the ones perpetuating racism. White people are the ones perpetuating it, and you know, they're going to be at the forefront of educating themselves and turning this whole thing on its head, because you know, historically they've been the ones who have even, I don't know why I'm saying they, white people have been, we have been the ones who have been implementing it anyway, because people obviously shouldn't even be seen differently for the color of their skin. And the people who put that idea into society that's now progressed so systemically, and it's worked so intricately into like every facet of society, is white people. Like that, it's completely stemmed from that. So it's like taking the actions to recognize it in every place that you can, and taking the actions to have those conversations and to educate other people is, you know, honestly at this point the least you can do. But it's just, it's worked so deep into everything now that like every day you have to like educate yourself further and recognize like, oh, okay, like this is something that we could work on. Which, you know, everyone's always like, oh, like more issues, like more stuff, like aren't you guys done yet? Like absolutely not, you know.
And I feel like that especially happens on TikTok. And I feel like the problem with that is, for the first time in history, everybody has the opportunity to talk about something that they believe in. You know what I mean? And so it's like, okay, so for the first time ever, you have all of these, you know, teenagers that have an opinion all in the same place, and you think there's not going to be any type of discourse. Of course there's going to be discourse, and of course there's going to be problems all the time. It doesn't mean that people are making them up. It's just that you didn't know about it. You know, like that's literally it. It's not some made up problem that's like coming, like, I don't know, you know, like anti-Semitism. People thought that that was just some made up thing. And it just, it's
Absolutely.
like people don't even understand, you know, these are deep issues engraved into our societies. And I mean deep issues. Anti-Semitism is a serious issue, and there are people that don't even know about it. I don't even like, it's just, it's crazy thinking about how like how social media has impacted, you know, the where politics is now, and you know, social justice and all of that. And I think it's really crazy, and just, you know, thinking about where it could get us in the future.
Yeah, it's just, it's crazy seeing all the people who are like, oh, like keep politics off TikTok. Like
Yeah.
2018 TikTok was so much better. Like everyone was, you know, no one was soft. That like,
Yeah.
you know, in and of itself, that just, that bothers me so much, because I can honestly thank TikTok for so much like education that I've received, which like seems silly because it's just like kids making videos on an app, but it's about the conversations that we're having. It's about like the points people make and like the comment section and the conversations, and just like the overall influence that the app has to like push people to be better as like a community. And obviously I do a lot of stuff outside of TikTok as well, and like I definitely make the effort to educate myself, but like TikTok definitely springboarded it for me. And I'm seeing like, because you're seeing all this stuff on your For You page of other people, you know, inspiring you and other people educating you. And it just makes you want to then continue that chain reaction and go and educate other people. So I can thank TikTok for so much of like what I've learned. And it's just crazy to
Absolutely.
me that anyone would even say like keep politics off TikTok, because it's kind of like, where else are we supposed to keep politics, especially for you,
Yeah,
at least? Like
exactly.
in terms of like the events going on, I think there's also other issues as well, in terms of like how they tore down and like kind of dehumanized the whole Black Lives Matter movement because of the select ones that did escalate, which, that's again another topic. They're fighting for their lives here, and these people are fighting because they lost an election. So it's not
Mhm.
even really comparable in the first place, but just the fact that like I've heard people say, oh, like you know, you guys, quote unquote, you guys like burn down cities, and like we break into one Capitol building and now we're the bad guys. Like that's, it's just so not comparable. And that's another thing, is like people are trying to compare these two events when it's completely different. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was thinking about that because I saw a lot of posts saying that specifically. And my thing about it is that, you know, say your people were stolen from a land, and they were brought here, and they were slaves for 400 years. 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 4 And after that, they had to go through, the Jim Crow era. They had to go through, segregation. They had to go through apartheid. They had to go through systemic racism till this day. Say that they were being killed by law enforcement that was first put in place, police that were first put in place as slave, watch, I guess. And so those people, that system, the same system that, put your people in chains, imagine that same system allowing for your brothers and sisters to be murdered. And now you're out on the streets and you're yelling and you're walking for the safety of you and your family and the Black person that lives across the street from you and the one that you see at the store every day. Imagine you rioting because you and people that look just like you are being killed because of the color of their skin. And now imagine people doing the same thing because a man who does nothing but spew hatred did not win an election. I think we have a reason to be really angry. If I had to take one thing out of this entire, process, even with everything that was going back in like May, up until now, I think it is, like I said before, when you look at, the Black Lives Matter movement, you think of riots. And I feel like that's what, like the news, that's all they think about. They think of the riots. And it's like, there were so many peaceful protests, so many, more than you can count. Like, I feel like it shouldn't even be brought up because of how many peaceful protests there were. It's almost irrelevant because, that's the only footage that they showed to specifically paint that light. And so when they show like the coup that was staged in the Capitol, it's like, oh, but that's not all Trump supporters though. Then why can't you understand that the riots that were happening back in the summer, that wasn't all, Black Lives Matter movement protesters. And even if it was, it would have been for two different reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I just think that's like, to this day, like the fact that, people could have the audacity to compare those two things is just so beyond me.
Yeah, it's like, number one, they're not even comparable. And if they were, like, if you wanted to compare them, okay, let's look at, I mean, like you said, let's look at an entire movement of people fighting for their lives and fighting to be treated equally versus some people who were upset over an election. Like, even if you did want to compare it, still absolutely, like, not right at all. This event in and of itself kind of just solidified everything that we've been trying to tell them. And it's kind of frustrating that they're still making excuses and they're still not internalizing it, Then also, so Trump was banned from Twitter, banned from many other platforms as well, or at least is going to be. That was honestly, I don't know about you, but I wasn't expecting that.
Oh, no way. I was confused when I saw it. I was like, what? Because like he got suspended on Twitter, and I was just like, oh, all right. And then he gets suspended on or banned on TikTok, and I was like, and then Tumblr and Pinterest and Spotify, and I was like, what is going? Like he's being trolled by like everybody, and I'm like, well, like it's
the TikTok
crazy.
one was funny to me too because it like he tried so hard to get that taken down. All of a sudden,
so funny. That was hilarious.
Yeah, I was not expecting that. That definitely kind of lightened the mood a little bit because everyone was really anxious and really upset. And all of a sudden, like, oh, Trump's banned from Twitter. And we were like, oh, that's awesome. I'm pretty sure other accounts also got banned. Like they started tweeting from a different account and that got banned.
Yeah. Yes, I saw that. Oh my gosh. I'm like, wow, can you imagine the president of the United States being banned from social medias?
It's so funny. It definitely feels like a victory, as small as it is. It feels like a small victory. But I don't know.
I don't know. It's just one of those petty things where it's just like that just lightened the mood for me,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. That was good. Okay, I'm gonna see if we have some interesting questions because I've put like things on my story twice for like who do people want to see on the podcast, and people said you like so many times.
Yeah. So my gosh.
Okay. How did you get into politics?
Oh wow. I think it was kind of a Whew, I feel like I was always, really curious about, how our world worked from like a really young age, but living in North Dakota with the Fargo, North Dakota, with the demographic being so white, I kind of was forced into understanding, what exactly racism was. And so it really started off with racism, and then you go into, the subs of it, and you understand like, cultural appropriation, you understand code switching, you understand, everything that has to do with kind of that sort of area.
Yeah.
And then you go into, feminism, you go into, understanding other social issues. And it kind of is just kind of, it's like a, I don't know, it's just kind of like a snowball effect where you just, understand a lot of other things, and you read about different issues. And it's just like, it's a lot easier than you would think it is, because I feel like everybody kind of wants to know what's going on, but a lot of people are scared to get into politics because they think it's rocket science. It's really not. It's it's probably better to understand politics. And so, it was really just, living where I do live, because I feel like if I lived in a demographic where, it was mostly people of color, I probably wouldn't have gotten into it at such a young age. But because of where I do live, I kind of have had to understand it because I was experiencing it. And I was like, oh, but I don't understand why though. And so, I had to ask questions about that and read about that. And, yeah, that's just kind of how it went.
Yeah. In for me, I think it's kind of like, obviously I didn't have to grow up in any sort of demographic where I would experience like racism or just like prejudice that would force me into politics. But as you said before, how racism is taught. I have like two of the most accepting, like very liberal, loving parents, and always kind of taught me the right ways to go. So I was always more educated on like the social justice side of things. But in terms of like actual American politics, I got into that at during like around the 2016 election because I was curious about how someone could win the popular vote by 3 million votes and still lose an election. So I
Mm-hmm.
learned a lot. I like, self-educated. I wrote a paper on it for school about like the flaws in the American political system, and it interested me how like how much wrong there can be in a country that prides themselves on being the best in the world. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
on the social justice side, I've always been, educating myself, and from a younger age being the one who, like, my parents are educating me or like telling me when things are wrong. But in terms of like actual politics, I got into that myself around the time of the election, because before that I was like in fourth grade for the election. Before that, I didn't even know what was going on. So
Yeah. Yeah, I was in eighth grade during the Trump Hillary election. And I feel like that was really like, even like, figuring that out. And I was like, why would he win? Like, that makes no sense.
yeah.
And having to learn about that, talking to social studies teachers, talking to all of my teachers and being like, so what do you think about this? And causing total discourse in my middle school over an election. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, it was such a weird time, because like, middle schoolers were getting into politics. And I was like, I feel like well, this was like 4 years ago. This was middle school. This was like eighth grade. Oh my gosh. Yeah,
Yeah.
4 years ago. I was like everybody was getting into it. Everybody. And I was like this is like things are changing, like, and it's like a slow pace, but it's like it's necessary. It's really necessary for these things to happen and for us to have these conversations, regardless of how young we are. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is an interesting question. Is it hard to deal with judgment when you're so open about your political stance?
Um, I it used to be, when, the only judgment that I would get was from my peers, right? And so it was like, oh, like, yeah, like I don't want to have this discourse right now with people that I have to see every day. But I think that after hearing, like, over the course of 9 months, all these stories of people who, have to face, so much adversity in this country, I feel like what I'm doing is so completely right that I really don't care.
Yeah,
Like
I
yeah.
completely agree. I was just gonna
Mm,
say, like, I on one hand, it's hard when people disagree because I like believe that my values are like with other people's best interests in mind. So when people disagree, it's not difficult on myself. It's difficult that I'm like, oh, okay, like this person is not being a good person. You know, that's like a weak explanation, but that's the hard part about it. Not like that I feel judgment for being open about my political stance. It's just frustrating that other people sometimes aren't on the same wavelength, you know?
Hmm. I feel like with my account, I've had to look at a lot of, reflection over what I post. And, like at first I was like, oh my gosh, like people are going to be mad at me for what I'm about to say. Like there are people out there that are not going to be happy with what I'm about to post. But then I realized, what do you post, Jackie? Like I post feminist content. I post content that's in the best interest of people of color. I post content that is in the best interest of Jewish people. I post content that is in the best interest of, body positivity and self love. And I'll be damned before I am, sad that I post anything like that. Like I am posting specifically for people who have consistently and constantly been oppressed and discriminated against in this country. And I will never be, upset about that
Mm-hmm.
ever, no
Yeah.
matter how much hate you get. Like, yeah,
At the end of the day, if you know that you're morally correct, the
yeah,
judgment that you receive from other people almost kind of it doesn't, dissolve, because that's, something that has to be handled, like,
mm-hmm,
facing people with different political views or just different social views in general. But it doesn't like hurt me. And I think you would feel the same way, because like, that the things you're posting, and myself as well, like I know the things that I'm posting are with communities or groups of people who are oppressed and who have experienced prejudice with their best interests in mind. So I know that like my morals are in check here. So someone
mm-hmm.
receiving judgment from someone else is almost like it would never demotivate me, you know?
Exactly. And it's so minuscule
Mm-hmm.
compared to, how much work that people put in for a better and just society. And so it's like it doesn't even matter sometimes.
Yep. Okay, one last question. This one's interesting. What's the first thing you're gonna do when COVID's over? So, in a world where COVID never existed, like if we could just go back to that, like what would be the first thing you could do?
Mm.
Like for example, I was gonna say I would go to a music festival. I love concerts, I love music, and those are definitely not coming back for a long time, which is very upsetting to me, but they're just so fun, just like being surrounded by people and like seeing your favorite artists on stage. That's so fun. I miss them so much. So that's what I would do.
I think that I would go to Los Angeles and meet my, friends that I've met on social media because they're just amazing people, like it's crazy. And like a lot of them are based out there. And I would love to travel to like where like they live. Like I just want to be able to see people that, I love, like physically, you know what I mean? And like I'm just so ready to see that. Like I'm so ready for all of the music festivals, yes, and like musicals and like shows, all of that. Like I'm just ready
Oh yeah.
to be engulfed by so many strangers, like I miss strangers, I do.
Yeah,
So
and that's never something I thought I
I
would do,
never,
but
oh my gosh, I am so like not a, like a big public place person. So for me to say like I miss seeing people that I don't know is so crazy to me, and I never thought I'd say that ever.
yeah, it's so crazy. And I can't wait. I want to go to LA so bad. I think, in a
Yes.
world where this never existed, that would be such a fun part of our lives. Like if COVID never happened, like we could be traveling and meeting all these cool people, and it would
Yes.
never be a problem. It's
Hmm.
like so weird that traveling's a problem now. I mean, obviously as it should be, because you should be like staying home, but I just mean like it's just so weird to think that I'm like I can't do that. Like that's not safe. It's
Yeah.
just
And I'm so ready for there to be, like a green light that it's like, everything is calming down. Like the moment that people are like, everything is calming down, we're going back to normal. I cannot wait for that moment.
I can't either. God, I don't even know. I can't wait to travel again too.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. And this would be like the first time for me to travel because I've lived in North Dakota like forever almost. Like the farthest place I think I've ever gone is like Michigan. I went to Boston for like a week. But yeah, like it's just like just to be able to finally see the world, and like I finally have the opportunity to.
Yeah.
I am just so ready.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
And we would actually, in a world without COVID, we would be meeting each other in like a couple weeks,
Yeah.
which
Yeah, the inauguration. Oh my God, can you imagine?
and of course, like we started planning that like right before the whole second wave started, with like the interest in
Yeah.
mind that like it would be better by January, and here we are, and it's absolutely not better. That's
Yeah.
It's so sad. But yeah, I don't, for people who are listening, basically like the leadership people of TikTok for Biden were planning on going to the inauguration. Obviously we couldn't, but that would have been so fun too. And just like being there would have been so cool.
I
But
know.
yeah, whatever. One day.
Yeah, one day.
All right. So that's those are all the questions we're gonna answer. Basically, for people who are listening again, if you want your questions answered, I can't really promise anything because I just post on my Instagram story whenever we start recording, which is like anywhere from Saturday to Monday because I post these on Wednesdays. So I don't know. Try to catch me, or just like maybe if you DM me something, maybe I'll remember it. But I have a little game. So in the spirit of Trump's Twitter getting banned, I have 5 tweets, and I think it's going to be pretty easy. You're going to tell me if Trump tweeted them or if Addison Rae tweeted them. So I think they're going to be pretty easy. No one ever,
Okay.
you might be the first guest to win the game at the end.
Oh, maybe. Let's
Okay.
hope.
Number 1 is, one good girl is worth 1,000 bad bleeps.
That's a hard one. I don't know. I'm just gonna have to go with my gut. Addison, maybe?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
But
That
it
was
was
hard.
I know.
Yeah.
Number 2, why is Obama playing basketball today? This is why our country's in danger.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. Addison tweets a lot like that. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to go Donnie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
But wouldn't put it past Addison for that. Number 3, Robert Pattinson should dump Kristen Stewart. I think he'll thank me in a couple years if he takes my advice.
I don't even know. Like, I genuinely don't even know. Addison?
No, Trump tweeted that.
No way. Shut up.
Trump had a Twilight phase.
No, you're
Yeah,
lying.
in like 2012 or something. He like tweeted about Twilight so much. Like this was like one of 3 successive tweets about Robert Pattinson. Okay, number 4. Hop up out the bed, turn my swag on with the sad face emoji.
Addison, maybe?
Yeah. Imagine Trump tweeting.
It was also difficult.
Okay.
I could imagine it.
Yeah. Last one. We need unity more than ever.
I don't think Trump would tweet that. Addison?
Yeah, Addison tweeted that. Trump would never say that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm like, no way.
Yeah, so 4 out of 5. Pretty good. I don't know. All right, so that was our episode together. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm sure everyone's gonna love this. You're so well spoken, and thank you for helping me vocalize our concerns, and the whole current situation in the country.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was a privilege.
Of course. So as always, at the end of the episode, I just have some people to thank. So thank you to Sara, the video and audio editor, Audrey, Daniel, Sydney, and Lou, the directors, Zander, the production manager, and Aiden and Ari, who are kind of my producers. They're just my friends. They help me out. So thank you to everyone for that, and thank you to you, Jackie, for joining me. It's been super fun, super interesting. I'm sure everyone's going to love the episode. So see you guys.
I hope so.
See you guys when I see you guys.